This is Studio 809.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I'm your host, Hiking Bob Falcone, and you can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, which has links to my social media, my photography website, my other podcast. Just about everything is there. You can email me from there. You can also help support this podcast at Patreon, patreon.com/hikingbob, and you help support this podcast. And all of that is at hikingbob.com. And joining me today is my co-host, Wild Westendorf.
Hey everyone, it's Kevin Wild Westendorf here, and you can find me on social media, primarily Facebook and Instagram. I think I'm going to check out Threads now, which is a alternative to Twitter. We all know Twitter, well, it's called X now. I'm never going to call it that.
It should be called S-Show.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. But Threads seems fun, and not as toxic as the other site
Doesn't seem to be.
turned into.
Yeah.
So hopefully it stays more positive. It's kind of how I compare Facebook and Instagram. I know they're both owned by Meta, but Instagram, like Facebook, you kind of see a lot more trash. Instagram is much more like, look at all the cool things. And
Well, you have to have a picture to post on there.
Yep, exactly. So, but you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, maybe Threads, at Wild Westendorf, and at my website, wildwestendorf.wordpress.com. And again, as soon as I get back on my feet in life in general, I will get a domain again that is just mine and is mine only.
Well, whatever works for you, though. And the good thing is, since you already have an Instagram, you already have a Thread. You just have to activate it.
Yeah.
So your name is still there and everything. So that's cool. So you're already ready to go. I have a Threads account. I used to be big on Twitter. A lot of us
Same here, yeah.
And it just got to be an S show.
Yep.
And I'm on there once a week to just tell people that the latest podcast is out and and stuff like that. And I don't mean to ignore anybody. I do look and make sure nobody's trying to DM me or send me a message or a mention or anything like that, but I am hardly ever on there. And I'm not on Threads very much either. I'm either on Facebook or on Instagram. I'm posting pictures.
Same here,
And that's all
yeah.
I'm doing is posting pictures. So that's pretty much all there is there. Kevin, you and I have been talking, and I've been mentioning on the podcast and on my newsletter that there are going to be some changes coming to the podcast. And you and I sat down and talked the other night, and I kind of gave you an idea what I was thinking. And I'm going to give everybody a little bit of background. Kevin and I talked last year, and at late last year, I think sometime after summer in the fall, you and I were talking, and I said I was pretty much going to put an end to the podcast. Probably put an end to it right about now. This is going to be episode 409. So for people counting, that's 409 straight weeks. And it's a lot of work. And there's a lot of other factors going on. It's not just because I don't want to do the work. I don't mind doing the work, but it's a lot of work. There's a lot of reasons behind why I was thinking that. But as I thought about it more, I still have a lot of stuff I want to say. Not that anybody cares necessarily what I have to say, but I also have a lot of people I want to introduce the listeners to, and I have a lot of people that I want to talk to, and this is the way I get to do it, by having them on the show. And if people listen to the last couple of weeks, I've had some really great interviews. There have been some really fantastic guests on this podcast, and I get lots of really great feedback when I have a guest on the podcast who's really interesting. So I sat down and thought about it. And again, I did talk to Kevin. So for people listening, I'm not leaving Kevin out in the dark. Kevin is, he's been an integral part of this show since just about the beginning. He's been the co-host since I had a co-host. And for people who don't know, this podcast went live August 1st, about 8 years ago.
8 years, man. That's wild.
Been crazy. But before it went live, I had already spent several weeks recording podcasts because I wanted to go live with stuff ready to go. I didn't want it to be, I didn't want it to be just out there, and just kind of flubbing it. I didn't want it to be there. We're coming up on 8 years on the podcast. So it's been work for about 8 years from when you're listening to this show. Marks about the 8-year point where we started it. Not quite 8 years when it went live, but that's coming up here in another couple of months. And there's a lot of stuff going on. I joined part of a collective here in Colorado Springs of locally produced podcasts. And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. That has not lived up to its promises by any stretch.
Yeah.
The podcast haven't grown as much as they should. I think that this podcast, covering a topic that it covers in a region that is very popular for outdoor recreation, should be a whole lot bigger than it is. Now, do I take some of the fault for that? Yes, because could I have promoted it more? I probably could have, but I don't know how to do that.
Same here. I could have done more with that too.
But to be fair, I didn't ask you to because you're not. I didn't feel it was fair to ask you to. I'm already asked you to come here and be on the show a lot of times. But I appreciate that you feel that you could have done something there. But I also entrusted people who know how to do that stuff to do that stuff, and they've just constantly failed. I get a lot of, I should have done that, or I'm going to do that, and nothing happens. And so it boils down to we have a great listener group, and I want to make it clear that if you're the people who are listening to this podcast and you listen to it and you subscribe to it, I cannot tell you how much I love that you're here.
Oh, yeah.
I just wish there were 10,000 more of you.
Yeah, true.
And it should be that. And I'm not taking anything away. If you've been somebody who's been listening to this and I hear from you, or I get, just last week, somebody stopped me and said they love listening to the show and they love it. We love hearing that stuff. We love that you, people who are listening to this right now, whether this is your first time or the 408th episode you listen to, and by God, you've got some persistence if it is, but I appreciate it. We love that you're out there. We're not saying that we don't appreciate you being out there. I definitely do not want that to be the message. The message is there should be 10,000, 20,000 more of you, and there just isn't. Now, I get it. Sometimes that's because we tend to be very hyper-local. That was kind of the intent. But we also cover a lot of things that even if you're not from here, if you're hiking, how many places have we talked about that are not here?
Oh,
lots.
Oh, yeah. I've lost track.
And how many topics have we talked about that it doesn't matter where you're hiking at?
Correct, yep.
Or if you're coming here, if you don't live here, but you're coming here, we've talked about places here. This podcast should be bigger. It just simply isn't. I don't know whose fault that is. But I do know that some people who I've entrusted to do something haven't done it. And I will tell you that I hate it when I don't live up to somebody's expectations. And the only thing I hate just a little less than that is when somebody doesn't live up to what I expect from them.
Mm-hmm.
So it hasn't gone as big as I'd like to. But I don't think that's a reason to stop it entirely. What I do think it is a time to sit back and re-examine where the podcast is going to go.
Yeah.
So here's what's going to happen. This podcast is going to air. You're going to hear this podcast on Wednesday. The next one will be in 2 weeks. So the first thing is this is no longer going to be a weekly podcast. It's going to be twice a month. That's number one. Number two is I'm going to start focusing a bit more on interviews as opposed to being like this one is, and a lot of them are just Kevin and I talking. Now, this is not a reflection on Kevin by any stretch of the imagination. I love the times that Kevin and I get to speak and talk to each other and bounce stuff off and give each other grief about something or give other people grief about something. But I think that the interview, I seem to have found my niche with the interviews.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think I'm just now getting to a point where more and more people are contacting me that they have a book author or something like that. And I really love talking to book authors. Matter of fact, I'm working on another one right now. So it's still going to be, Kevin's going to be here. It's going to be me and Kevin occasionally, but I'm going to be focusing more on bringing people in to interview, whether they're book authors or people who have influence or something along those lines. So this is going to be a little bit of a change in how things go. Now, if this is something you're not happy with, I'm talking to the listeners, email me. Go to my website, click on the Contact Me, send me an email. Tell me that this is not what you want. Tell me what your thoughts are. Tell me if you think this is a good idea or a bad idea. Tell me if you're thinking, finally, I don't have to hear them every week. Let me know what you think. And for my patrons at Patreon, you are the lifeblood of this podcast. I will tell you right now that while you do now hear ads at the beginning and end of each podcast, those are inserted by Libsyn, the company that hosts this for us. I've asked them to do that because I need funding. I will tell you that it's not a lot of money. It's very little. Because, again, we talked about how we don't have the big, huge tens of thousands of listener base that I'd like to have. Or the tens of thousands more listener base that I'd like to have. So we get some, ad support, but it's not very much. The patrons are really what is supporting this podcast. They're the only thing keeping it alive. So here's the thing. Libsyn charges us a flat rate per month. If I do 1 podcast or 8 podcasts, it's the same amount of money per month, unless I go over my storage on their servers every month, which I haven't done yet. So if you're a patron, I definitely want to hear from you. And by the time you're hearing this on the podcast, you'll probably have gotten an email from me that goes into much greater depth as to what I'm talking about here. I just don't want to bore everybody with it. If you're a patron, I hope that you continue your support, even with this change that's coming. If you're considering being a patron, I hope that maybe this change in direction, will encourage you to make that move and become a patron. We appreciate everybody. I want to remind people that if you go to the Patreon page and look at the rewards that are offered, if they're not something you want for your level of reward, email me and let me know what you'd like to have or what I can offer you as a reward. Or you don't want any reward. You just want to be a supporter. That's fine too. I have some patrons who are like, don't bother sending me anything. Just keep doing what you do. But if there's something else you want in lieu of what I offer for the rewards there, then let me know and I'll see if I can accommodate you or see if we can figure out a way to accommodate you with that. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but I'll entertain any suggestions. So that's kind of where we're going. It's been a lot of work, a lot of pouring my heart into it. I'm not getting any younger. I have a milestone birthday coming up in a couple of months. That's
35, almost
boy.
there.
Oh my God. A Medicare age, Kevin.
It's so weird to me.
Oh God, it's weird to me. I'm the one doing it. On the other hand, I'm gonna get better health care than I have now. So true. Yeah. But in any case. So things are changing, but I don't want to stop doing this. I want to move from just talking to people, which I think is great. And maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm going to hear people say, no, don't do this. But I think it's going to be that I'm going to have more fun introducing the listeners to other people. I'm thinking of, and trust me, I'm not on this level, but I'm thinking like on Max or on what other network is it on where they do, I think CNN does it. Look Who's Talking to Chris Wallace. Interviews, just nothing but interviews with people, and they're usually 30 minutes or so. Great interview. Of course, he's a professional interviewer. He's a news guy and stuff like that. But I think I've kind of found a way to talk to people and interview them without being confrontational. Nobody wants to be confronted. I'm not doing 60 Minutes or Dateline or To Catch a Predator or anything like that. We're not ambushing anybody, but we're talking to people. And sometimes I ask them tougher questions. But they're never with the intent of embarrassing anybody or making them feel uncomfortable. It's because I have questions. I have found that as I ask more people to be on the podcast, they've heard about it or they've talked to people who've been on the podcast and they feel comfortable and there's less and less resistance to people being on the podcast. There's still some. Some people just aren't comfortable. That's okay. I'm never going to embarrass anybody by saying so-and-so refused to come talk to me. That's okay. Oh, yeah. You don't have to. I've seen shows where they do that. They don't have the guts to come talk to me. Nah, that's not the way I do things here. So there you go. There you have it. It's going to be twice. It's going to be twice a month. It's going to be hopefully more and more interview content. Kevin will still be here. Kevin will still be a part of it. I'm even hoping that if scheduling can work out, Kevin can be a part of those interviews.
For sure. Yeah.
I would like to have you on there, Kevin. The reason why I have you here is because it's another point of view. It's a different aspect. It's a different angle. It's a different look at things. But sometimes that's just not easy to do. I have tremendous flexibility because I'm retired. I don't have a job. I don't have a job because I'm retired. Not that I'm unemployed. I just don't have a job because I'm retired. I have all the flexibility in the world. That makes it easier for me to actually get interviews with people. And my equipment is portable, so I go to their office and I sit down with them in their office, which A, is it's easier for them, and B, it's also less threatening, if that's the right word. They feel comfortable because I'm coming to them, and all I'm doing is using a part of their desk or conference room table and putting down a couple of microphones and saying, let's chat. So it's easy for me to arrange interviews at almost any time, easier than it is for Kevin to be a part of it. But, if there's an opportunity when Kevin can take part in an interview, by all means, we're going to see if we can make that happen and have Kevin be somebody who's asked the questions that I may not think of, or just approach it from a different point of view. So that's where we're going. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Email me. Go to my website, hikingbob.com. Click on I think it says contact and newsletter. They're both on the same page. You can sign up for the newsletter and scroll down and you can send me a note. Or just email me, info@hikingbob.com, and tell me what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And again, if you're a patron, by the time you hear this, you should have gotten an email from me that goes into a lot more detail. But the patrons have a lot to say because they're the ones shelling out their hard-earned money to help us support this podcast and keep it going.
Yep.
And we'll just see what goes from there. Hopefully this experiment will work. Fingers crossed. But I wanted everybody to know that we really appreciate those of you who are listening. It's not the throngs and hordes and tens and hundreds of thousands of people I would have hoped for, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
The people who are listening and who I see on the street or who email me or send me a note on social media and say they've listened to the podcast, they liked it or didn't like it or whatever, thank you so much for listening, and I hope to keep you here as an audience member. So,
yeah, I'll have to say, when you first approached me about changing the direction of the podcast, I was pretty upset because I thought you were going to tell me you wanted to change the theme to discuss our shared love of disco music.
There's two things wrong with that.
No, but I think it's a great idea to have a more balanced approach. In terms of work-life balance, I mean, that's a really big thing in recent years. And I know podcast is not like typical work. Obviously, I know it's a career for a lot of people who are just lucky. I think a lot of it has to do with luck sometimes. But I think this would help. Not that I've ever thought the podcast was lacking in quality, but I think this would really, really help increase the quality. It would help raise the bar. To have a more balanced approach to it, especially with having having a larger focus on having more guests on, because I don't like to hear my voice, so I rarely ever listen to an episode that I'm on, but I love the ones you do with the guests, especially like we talked about the other day. I like hearing it from. Is this the right term? From the horse's mouth?
Oh, actually it is, yeah.
Yeah. I want to hear from the source, like an expert on the source, because you're an expert. You've been a hiker for like your whole life, it sounds like. And I feel like I'm still learning and such, but I like hearing from a forest ranger or a director or leader of a nonprofit that focuses on the outdoor recreation. I like hearing it from the source in terms of like, these people are experts in their very specific fields, whereas this show, between me and you, it's still a lot of opinions and thoughts and beliefs, which is great. It's fine. That's normal. That I like that a lot. But again, like I said, I just really enjoy hearing from that specific source, expert source.
Right. Well, two things. I guess I have to ditch the idea of making this a disco show.
Damn it.
Darn it. That was never going to happen. I grew up in the disco era, so I was a young adult in the disco era. So let me just say, I had a bumper sticker on the pickup truck I owned that said, I'd rather eat barbed wire than listen to disco. Any case, Kevin, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're on the same page with this. I mean, you're
Yeah.
still going to be here. Kevin's still going to be here, folks. And we're going to talk a little bit. But, I think as I've interviewed people, I hear more opinions and I hear things and I share part of it. And I'm going to give you all a little trick. And this is a lawyer trick. You've heard that lawyers are told never to ask a question in court that they don't know the answer to, because you want to be prepared. I often have guests on here that I'm asking them questions that I do know the answers to. But the thing is, I want everybody to know the answer to that question.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that I know everything and I'm just having somebody on here as an echo chamber. I ask a lot of questions that I do not know the answers to. That's why that's why I have guests on the show. I'm going to ask them a lot of questions. I have no idea what's going on. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. Sometimes we do ask questions. So I sometimes get people, you really asked that question? Don't you know that? Yeah, I know that. I don't know if anybody else knows that. So
Exactly. Yep.
at board meetings, public meetings that I have to have that are open to the public, I ask questions of staff or experts that I do know the answers to, but I want them to explain it to everybody. But in any case, we're going to see how this goes. This might be a complete debacle, but I don't think it will. I think it's going to work out pretty well. So for all of you out there listening who have been listening for the last almost 8 years since this has gone live, thank you again so much for your support. I hope you continue your support. For those of you who are financially backing this, I hope you continue. Please email me, let me know your thoughts. And for those of you considering becoming a patron, I hope you also do that and help support this podcast. Because I will tell you that without the financial support, whether I get it from ads, which I'm hoping to get more ads. To be honest with you, Kevin, I'd like to make enough money on ads that I don't have to have patrons.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say no to anybody being a patron, but it would be nice to not have to rely on the listeners to support this. It'd be nice to be able to have the big bucks from advertisers support this. That's kind of where I'd like to go. So, anyway.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I also want to say thank you, everyone. I will never forget the day Bob asked me to be a co-host, and my immediate thought was like, no way, because I was much more self-conscious at the time about my speech impediment, and I know even on the show I have my good days and bad days with it. Thanks for sticking with me about it, and I've also been stopped on the trails a few times, and people recognize me from Instagram and Facebook, and they also recognize me from this show. And there's just a really cool feeling when you're just on a hike and someone stops you, especially if this one guy, he like slammed on his brakes on his bike and it's like, hey, you're Wild Westendorf. And like, I love your show with Hiking Bob. And I can't quite describe it. And it totally feeds the ego and stuff too, obviously, but there is a really nice feeling to be recognized, especially because we've been doing this for almost 8 years. So it's nice to know that people are out there, and even the ones we never meet or talk to, just getting your feedback via email or comments on social media is great. It's uplifting, and I know we've gotten feedback too that was more constructive criticism. Like
some of it not so constructive, but that's okay.
Oh yeah. But like that's good stuff too. Just be nice about it, obviously, but because it helps us make the show better, because we do listen. It's not like, well, we're going to do things our way and stuff. I mean, we do, but we still want the feedback.
Right.
To make the show more appealing, not in the sense that we're going to change our views on stuff to be more mass audience, but more fitting for what people want.
Again, Kevin's killing the idea of the disco show.
So you're turning it back on me. Oh, how the tables have turned.
We're having a good time here. Kevin, thank you so much. And thank you for being on the show for so many years. And just, folks, he does it for nothing. And I ask him out here, and, he comes over and we do this podcast, and he's always willing to do it. Sometimes we do it on Zoom, and he's always willing to do it. And I appreciate that, Kevin, so much that you're willing to do it for nothing. The other thing is, I'd like to pay Kevin for being on the show. I'd like to get paid for being on the show. But I don't want the patrons to do that. I want a bigger listener base with a better advertising to do that. Really, the patrons help us just pay the bills and just keep this thing alive. and that's what I appreciate them being out there for.
Yeah.
So, I listen to a lot of podcasts. My iPod has more podcasts on it than it has music on it.
Same here. Yeah.
Probably a really bad idea. And I've also heard of other podcasts that are just, why is this thing even on as a podcast? And they get hundreds of thousands of listeners. I don't know how to crack that. If somebody knows how to crack that, and without asking me for $10,000 to do it, because somebody did, like, if I had that kind of money, would I need you? If you know how to crack that, how I can get this thing out there, boy, I'd love to hear from you.
Like, I love movies. I watch movies all the time. I just watched a bunch of horror movies over the weekend because I was in a horror movie mood. I even watched a horror movie that involves hiking, so I probably should not have done that.
Probably not a good idea.
But there's a million movie podcasts out there, which is great. But a lot of them do extremely well. So it's like, what do they do that separates them from the rest? But there's not a million outdoor podcasts. So yeah, it's just
there are very few, and I think we're the only weekly one.
I bet. And then there's been a lot of outdoor podcasts that I found that are more hiking focused, like ours is, that did a few episodes and then just stops. Like their last episode was in 2021 or 2019. So I think it's awesome that we've been on the air for almost 8 years. We're at episode 409. I think that's a testament to our passion of the outdoors and how much we care. And it's a testament to our listeners too, big time, our listeners and supporters, that you share that passion with us and you enjoy hearing us talk about our exciting adventures. And also, well, the county might change a rule about this park or something. Like, you still want to hear about that stuff too.
Right.
And I think it's great. So I am glad that the podcast is moving in a different direction rather than putting an end to it so far.
We'll see how it goes. And, I don't know. Boy, if anybody knows how to break that barrier, I wish I knew how to do it. For people, if you're interested, people who may or may not be interested in this, a way back I did some research, like what is the longevity of a podcast? And the average is like 30 episodes.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, they last so many, and some of them are done seasonally, which is something we thought about. Kevin and I thought about doing a seasonal thing. Like I would do like maybe 8 interviews, and so I release a season of 8 podcasts, and then take a couple months off. I don't like doing that. If I lose the momentum, I'm going to lose the momentum.
Oh, true. Yeah.
But they don't last so for a podcast like this one, and I can name a few that I listen to that are not rebroadcast of radio shows. That's different. That have actually, or rebroadcast of TV shows. Like I listen to Dateline. Well, that's just an audio recording of their TV show.
Yeah.
Some of them I listen to are just recordings of their shows. Well, that's okay, but that's not a podcast. Actual podcasts that have lasted as long as this one are few and far between.
Absolutely.
Very few and far between. I can count on one of the ones I know of. Now, of course, that doesn't mean I know of everything. That have lasted 300, 400, 500 episodes. There's not many of them out there. And I don't want to stop, but you can understand where I'm at. I hope everybody understands. I hope you understand that this is not a reflection on you, the listener. It's just trying to balance a few things out here. And this is my effort to not just stop cold turkey and say, we're done, we're out of here, see ya, thanks for listening. I want to keep it going, but I want to keep it going in a way that's manageable. So I hope this is the way we do that.
Hey, we got the hard part out of the way.
What's that Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times. I think we're taking a big dive right into that right now.
Yeah.
So with that out of the way, a couple things going on that have gone on around here. Number one, it's boating season big time in Colorado, which is rafting and stuff like that. Just over the last week, there have been a number of fatal water-related or boating-related incidents throughout the state of Colorado. Almost all of them because nobody's wearing a life preserver. For crying out loud, people, put on the damn life preserver.
Please.
In one of them, they saw the life preserver going down the river, and behind it, dead, the person who was supposed to be wearing it.
And
the life preserver sitting in the bottom of your boat doesn't do you any damn good. Put the thing on.
And not only put it on, make sure it's correctly on.
Right. And the correct
and
size.
strapped and yeah. So
And don't drink while you're out there boating.
oh,
Because
please
the other common thing, a lot of these boating accidents is people drinking. If you, I want to be careful how I word this. Seriously, can you go a couple hours without drinking while you're on the water and wait till you get back? Then
Yeah.
it's kind of like my opinion of they need to stop serving booze on airplanes because look at all the booze-related flights that get diverted and people get arrested because for some reason they can't go 2 hours in a metal tube without having to drink themselves into oblivion. Just wait till you get back on land and then have your drink and enjoy yourself and have your adult beverage, which I like to do too.
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with that. I'm not shaming anybody for wanting to enjoy an adult beverage. Just think about how you're doing it, and maybe out there in the hot sun in a boat is not the place to do that. Wait till you get on land, because the worst you can do there is fall in the sand, not drown.
Yeah, I actually haven't had a drink in a long while. I decided it's time for a little bit of a break. Plus, it affects my body a lot more now in the recent years too. So it's just kind of like it's not worth it. Like
You're
and
getting
I'm talking,
old.
Yeah. Wait, no, what? Wait, really? Even 2 beers, I would feel it the next day, and I'm just like, it's not worth it. It's just I feel sluggish and just it's not fun. But I have had the experience in the past of being dehydrated. You're in the hot sun, you're on the beach, and you drink a little bit too much, or it's very, very easy to feel the effects of drinking a lot faster, especially when you're dehydrated in the hot sun. It's not fun. And especially when you're on a boat, that is just dangerous. I mean, it's just a bad idea because you might lose your you have a much higher chance of losing your balance and you fall overboard. Or if you're operating a boat, which is very illegal if you're drinking. I've seen videos of accidents, of really bad ones, where they just crash into another boat because they don't realize it, or they take turns way too sharp because they're going really fast. And it's the same thing as drunk driving. It's illegal and it's dangerous.
Yep. So everybody, let's just be kind of careful out there, okay? Just do us a favor and be safe out there. It was shocking to see, because I get text messages from all of these. So a lot of these didn't even make the news, or didn't make the news here in Colorado Springs because they happen on the other side of the state. But the number of them I've seen in the last week was pretty shocking. So let's just be careful out there. Be careful when you're hiking. Let's not become a search and rescue mission. However, having said that, I will also say that sometimes stuff just happens. There was a thing I posted in my newsletter a couple weeks ago about a rescue that had to happen on Quandary Peak, which is a fairly easy 14er, but not necessarily this time of year when there's still a lot of snow. These were hikers who kind of knew what they were doing, were well equipped, ended up having to be a subject of a helicopter rescue. But there was 3 words in the story that I linked to. 4 words, deviated from the plan. That's kind of what got them in trouble. But I'm not shaming them. These were much better equipped and trained people than normally end up at search and rescue mission. I was a subject of a search and rescue mission, and I like to think I know what I'm doing. Actually, the people who rescued me said I did. It was just sometimes stuff happens. But be careful out there.
Yeah.
And don't get in over your heads. And if something happens, know how to get out of it. We've talked about that a lot. Don't wander around if you're lost. Stay put. Hopefully you told somebody where you're going. Hopefully you have a beacon so people can come find you. All that kind of good stuff. Just be careful out there, folks. It's the beginning of summer. It's supposed to be fun. Fun. So, I'm trying to think if I had anything else, Kevin. It kind of, most of that, the first 20 minutes or so, it kind of took up what I wanted to talk about. You had a couple things you want to talk about. Go ahead. The microphone is yours, my friend.
Cool. So 2 weekends ago, I was invited to go to a vintage and vinyl market at Red Lake Brewery here in the Springs. And if you don't know, it is a hop, skip, and a jump from Garden of the Gods. It was kind of a shock to me to learn that stuff I really enjoyed in my childhood is now considered vintage. I am not acknowledging that label.
I'm twice as old as you. How the hell do you think that makes me feel?
And but I had some time to kill, so I decided to park in my secret parking spot on the south side of the garden.
It's at 624 North Main Street in downtown. No such address. Don't even go there.
What's funny is 624 was the house number of a house I did live in downtown, like years ago.
I literally pulled that out of the air. I didn't even know that.
That's funny. And it was actually the first place I lived in the downtown area.
I really didn't know that. Honest to God, I didn't know that.
That's so funny. But yeah, so I decided to kill time by parking on the very, very southern edge of the park, and I hiked through the garden all the way through, and I connected a few trails, and then I got onto the bike path, and that trail takes you straight to Red Lake. So I did that. It was a great way to kill about an hour-ish or so, and then I enjoyed the market. I got food. And then I hiked back. It was a beautiful day. It got a little windy at times, but it was fine. Then on this previous Saturday, I did a hike with my friend. Recently moved back to the Springs because, like many of my friends, they move away for jobs or the military and stuff. And then once they're done with that, they've always just wanted to move back here in the Springs, which I think is great. I think that's a great aspect of the city is that it just seems to hold a special place in a lot of people's hearts. So I was really, really glad that she's back home. So we were going to do a hike up to Mount Muskoka, and we wanted to make it about an 8-mile hike or so. So we hiked Lower Columbine from Starsmore to a part of Middle Columbine to the Creekside Trail, and then connected that to the Mount Cutler and Mount Muskoka trails.
Which, for those people, just real quick, who aren't familiar, up until a couple years ago, you could not get from the Columbine Trail to the Mount Cutler Trail without walking on the road, which in that area has no shoulders.
And it's curvy, too.
It's windy and barely is actually wide enough for 2 cars to fit through. So that Creekside Trail connected those, so you can actually start at the bottom. And what that's done, too, is reduce traffic into the park because people can hike in front. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but that's why it was important that I just... you mentioned that Creekside Trail, but I want to bring out why that was important.
Yeah, and it's a huge improvement because before it was very easy to possibly get hit by a car if you're on a street in that section. So it's a huge improvement. Plus, the majority of the trail up to the trailhead for Cutler and Muskoka, it's a little hilly in parts, but it's mostly like a nice ascent. There's a couple parts that can be considered steep, but they're very, very, very short sections. It's just a really nice, chill hike, especially if you just hike to the Cutler and Muskoka trailheads and turn back. That hike itself is just nice, and you're and especially this past Saturday, we saw a ton of wildflowers along there, just in full bloom. It was beautiful. And then once you get up to the Cutler and Muskoka trail, you go up a ways. It's not even... 3/4 of a mile up? It's not a full mile, I don't think. When you hit the split or the fork.
No, because it's a little over a mile to the top of Mount Cutler. So yeah, it's about right.
Yeah, and so we hit the fork, and then we looked over to Muskoka, and we see these dark clouds rolling in. So we're like, okay, let's just do a quick summit of Mount Cutler, come back down, and then we'll see if we want to go up Muskoka. And so we did that. We got a bunch of photos in. It was great. Came back down to the fork, and the clouds were even darker now. And it was clear the storm was rolling east towards us. So we decided to play safe and just not waste our time going up there and get rained on or hailed on. So we came back down. Took the same way back, which was a little over a mile, like 5.13 miles or something like that. Still a great hike. It was a bummer we couldn't get up to Muskoka, but of course, once we left and had reached the downtown area, it was blue skies again. So we're just like, great, come on.
Welcome to the mountains.
I know, it's fun, isn't it? So it's just like, okay, we could have just waited a little bit, but it did start to rain a bit, and
but you don't know that either.
Correct.
The problem with living here, for people who are not familiar, is that we're right up against the mountains, which means we can't see past them.
Yeah.
So when you're right up against 14,000, 10,000, 9,000 foot peaks and you can't see past them, you really don't know, unless you have an app and you can look at active weather radar, it's hard to see what's past that. So you see these big clouds looming up. So is that just one thing that's going to pass over, going to be fine? Or is that the beginning of 2 hours of lightning, rain, hail, or yes?
Yeah.
All the above.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've experienced that many times where I've bailed on hikes because of bad weather, and then by the time I get a mile down, it's clear again. But it's better safe than sorry, as always. Plus, the mountains are always going to be there.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
And I've done that where one weekend I'll bail on a hike because I was feeling sick, I wasn't feeling well, or the weather got really bad, and then I turn back and suddenly I feel better and the weather clears, and I'm just like, well, I'm not going to go back because I've lost a lot of valuable time. But then I'll just go back the next weekend. And for me, the part that sucks is when I've had to do that, when I've had to drive a couple miles, or not miles, a couple hours somewhere.
Well, it's a few miles.
Yeah. Like, what? And because I would say twice now, I've had to drive 2+ hours somewhere. One was because I got sick on the trail, and it was going to be a huge hike. So I was just like, there's no way I'm going to risk this. I might get dehydrated because I got sick.
Or if nothing else, you're just going to be miserable and not going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and feel tired and weak. And then the first time was when we were trying to do a training hike on the Four Pass Loop outside of Aspen. And it was a training hike for the Grand Canyon. So this was back in 2018. The first attempt is the weather was beautiful. We hit the first pass, and as soon as we went back down towards the second pass, the storm rolls in, and it is torrential downpour, and we all had our raincoats and stuff, and we didn't see any lightning or hear thunder, so we're like, okay, it's just rain, it'll pass. But then it just didn't pass, and the trail became extremely muddy. I accidentally did the splits because my left foot hit a rock or like a little boulder that was sticking out of the trail, and my left foot stopped, but my right foot, because of the mud, just kept going forward. So I did the splits, and I was really, really lucky. I was sore in a certain area, obviously, on the way back, but I was really lucky I didn't
Kevin, at my age, if I did that, I'd still be out there screaming.
Well, my friend had to come over, and she grabbed my backpack to pull me up because I got stuck. And and I knew if
This isn't funny, but this is funny.
Yeah. And I knew if I rolled over to my side, I could get up, but it was so muddy, and I was like, man, if I roll over, I'm just going to get half my clothes just soaked in mud. So I was like, Heather, come here, please. And so she just grabs the top straps of my backpack and just pulls me up. So we and then our friends who were running that trail, they came running back and said, it's getting worse. And they got far enough to reach a part towards going up to the second pass. And that was way too steep with the mud and everything. And they were trying to get up, and it just kept sliding down. And plus, when you try to do that too much, you start to destroy the integrity of the trail.
Right, yeah. I was going to say you destroy the trail itself.
Yeah, and so they came back and said, hey, we've got to turn back. This rain is it's relentless. It's awful. And so we turned back. But, of course, as soon as we went back over the first pass, got a couple miles down, blue skies, sunny, the weather was beautiful, but that was also a huge hike, and we had lost a lot of valuable time. So we're like, okay, but then I went the next week, and I did the entire thing on my own, and it was so worth it. But there's always that sting of man, I just wasted a ton of time and gas money to trip and back.
The thing was, even though the sky cleared, that mud wasn't going to dry up right away.
Correct.
So it was still going to be a nasty mess, and it wasn't going to be good. So it was still the right thing to do. That happens out here. And if you're not prepared for it, then you should be learning that this stuff happens. And, it could rain. And we know out here that in the afternoon there's a chance of rain almost every afternoon. And it could happen. That's why we get out early, get up there, do our thing, and get back. And if it's going to rain, that's why you carry rain gear. And,
yep.
And trust me, from somebody who actually got hypothermic in the middle of August because we got rained. I got rained on. I've told you that story before. That you need to be prepared for it. I will never go out without a rain jacket again because I did that one time, and literally on an 85-degree day in August was sitting in my car soaked with the heater running full tilt, shivering, because at our altitude, for people not familiar, the elevation, actually the right word, that rain is fresh out of the sky and it's very cold. It's not that, people on the East Coast, it's a warm, gentle, refreshing rain. Not here, it ain't. It's cold. Temperature drops 10 to 15 degrees when a storm comes through. It gets cold. I got hailed on out of the clear blue at a baseball game the other day.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Out of the clear blue. And it wasn't even cloudy, no rain. All of a sudden, hail the size of quarters started coming down. And that's at a baseball game at 6,000 feet. That's not at 10,000 feet or anything like that.
And I do want to add a little bit. I've seen lightning when there's blue sky above me. And what a lot of people don't realize, I think lightning can reach up to like 10 miles away, can start at a cloud way off in the distance, and can essentially shoot sideways. So it's also really, really important to be aware of hail, obviously, but lightning too. Even if it's in a distance, it can still reach you.
Absolutely. Kevin, you got anything else? I think that's all I had for today.
I just have one more thing.
Go ahead. It's all yours.
I'll make this quick, but this past Sunday, I went to the Outside Magazine Festival.
That's right.
I don't have a subscription to the magazine itself, but occasionally I'll come across an article of theirs online that is really good, or I sometimes like to read the reviews of gear that they have. This was the inaugural festival of theirs in Denver. I don't view myself as a gear nerd, but it was really exciting to just see all the vendors there, and I'm talking vendors from around the world, who are just showing off their gear, brands I've never heard of that you wouldn't see at REI because they're really small, so they may be sold in a regional area instead of across the country or world. And of course, there was the big names there too, with big prices on their stuff also. Yeah. Whew.
Yeah, let's not forget that. Some of the stuff can be expensive.
I saw a jacket there that was $750, and it's like, this jacket needs to do the hiking for me.
Or carry me.
Yeah, yeah. But it was really cool because a lot of these vendors had a bunch of prototype gear, and I'm talking clothes, backpacks, fabrics. So there's fabric called Cuban fiber. It's the most lightweight fiber that's out there for outdoor gear. You can find tents and backpacks made of other stuff. I would love to get a backpack made of this stuff, but they're extremely expensive. But there's a startup that is doing like fanny pack stuff or shoulder bags made out of Cuban fiber, but because it's much smaller stuff, it's more affordable.
Wow.
But it's Cuban, Cubben, not Cuban as in Cuba.
He's saying that because I'm Googling it right now because I've never heard of this stuff.
Yep, exactly. But they also added a dozen or so music artists up there. It was a 2-day festival. And the reason my friend and I chose to just go to the one on Sunday is because there were 2 bands there that we really, really like. So we're like, cool, let's check out all this outdoor stuff. Plus, they had a bunch of food trucks, so the food was amazing. And we got to end the night bands that we really, really enjoy. And it took place downtown Denver, so it's between the Capitol building and this other building. I'm not really sure what that building is for.
Oh, that's the across from the Capitol building is the City and County building.
I think
that
yes.
big,
Okay, yeah. It takes place in the park between both of the buildings. Not a place I ever thought would be a music venue, but they did a fantastic job with it. I really enjoyed my time there. They had all kinds of activities for kids too, so it was very family friendly. It was a great time. I really hope it was successful so that they'll come back next year in Denver. Not Salt Lake City, because I know we compete with them on a lot of outdoor stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be great if they came back. It was just a fun way to spend a day in Denver, because my friend and I explored downtown Denver a little bit, and she lives up there, so she was my guide. Just no matter how many times I go to Denver, I still get confused about the downtown area because the grid changes.
Right. That middle part of the city's at an angle. Yeah.
Which I found out they did that on purpose because it allows equal melting of snow in the wintertime.
Well, that makes sense.
Where when it's a north-south grid,
only the roads facing north and south would melt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which makes sense, especially when you're driving and you have to know exactly which streets to go on, and you have to be quick about it. It's overwhelming.
Right.
So I took the bus thing up to Denver.
How was that?
Fantastic. It's $12 one way from anywhere in the Springs to any of the stops in Denver, which $12 one way is probably what I would pay in gas.
But Kevin, if I take the bus, who am I going to have road rage at?
Right, exactly. It's wasted time. No, but I actually really enjoyed it because I didn't have to worry about driving, so I could sightsee and just be on my phone or read and just relax. I didn't have to worry about other drivers, and I didn't have to worry about trying to find a parking spot in downtown Denver.
Which is a nightmare.
Yeah, and the round trip, it was $24. about the same as I pay for a round trip in my car, because my car is not the best on gas mileage. So without all that stress and anxiety and frustration and getting mad at other drivers, it was nice. So if it fits within my schedule, I plan to take the bus thing up there if I can.
Cool. Just real quick on the Cuben fiber, Cuben. That's actually an old name for it now. It's called Dyneema composite fabric, and it says formerly Cuben fiber. Basically, it's a ripstop. So if you're familiar with ripstop nylon, which it's been around for a bazillion years, it's similar to that, but it's a different design. I've never heard of it. I've gone to those trade shows before, and I'm just not enamored with them because it's just, okay, you've got new clothes, you got a new tent, you got a new backpack.
Yeah.
Go on. Maybe I'm missing the point. Show me new technology.
Which there was.
Then I'll get interested. And I'm sure they had some of that.
Yeah, they had a booth from CU Denver, because apparently CU Denver has a program or department where they actually look at the future of gear and try different things, try different types of materials and stuff. So it was cool to talk to them.
Right.
Nothing earth-shattering, obviously, but it was just cool to know that it's not just a company being like, we have a new backpack with a strap over here now.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like, okay, we have a backpack. Yeah, and so do they. And
yeah.
I don't care. I get the one that's best for me, and then I maybe I'm missing the point. I'm glad they have it. I'm glad they brought it to Colorado. I think that's great. I hope they keep doing them. I agree with you. I think this is a great thing. People say, "Are you going to go up to the show and what? See another backpack, another pair of pants, another shirt?"
Yeah.
I have an idea. Shoot me. But I get it that people want to go. I just because that's my opinion doesn't mean that doesn't make it a worthwhile thing by any stretch of the imagination. So
we would have gone if it was just an expo.
Right.
It was just the bands that were playing on a Sunday night.
Right.
And we're like, oh, cool. So we get to do all the outdoor stuff or see all the outdoor stuff. And then there's these two bands that we really like. So I think that was a nice balance.
All right, Kevin. Well, I think with that we've been on almost an hour. So I think it's probably time to let people go. Have anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Everybody, thanks again for listening. Thanks again for enduring the first 20 minutes or so, and we talked about the future plans of the podcast. Please let us know what you think. Go to hikingbob.com, click on the link there to contact me, and send me an email. Or if you have me on social media, send me a DM and let me know what you think, good, bad, or otherwise. And with that, I think we'll say thanks for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast.
We'll talk to you later.
See ya.